I think Jan might still be in the other meeting.
Oh, or is Jan in the other meeting? All right, if I can get Leanne to just grab her and bring her over, that would be great. We're recording right now. I'd like to welcome you all to the special meeting of the Lethbridge School Division Board on Friday, March the 26th. I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Blackfoot people. If I could just have a motion to approve our agenda today. Donna moves to approve the agenda. Call the question, all in favor? I see everyone's hand. Thank you. And the majority of our trustees, you are identified by name on screen, and so those watching our board meeting will see the speaker only. And Doug James and Lola Major are joining us from the boardroom, and they are under the name of Leanne Tedder for this board, for this team meeting. So on today's agenda, we have performance infrastructure program, and leading us through this will be Christine Lee, Associate Superintendent of Business Affairs, as well as Daniel Keaton, Director of Facilities. So welcome, Daniel, to our meeting. And Christine, I will pass it on to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Christine. So just as a reminder, when we started, I'm going to give a little history on where we've come since July. We're going to show you some pictures and a chart, and I'm going to have Daniel kind of explain to you kind of what we went through regarding the technical audit and what we looked at to come up with what we call the scope of work listing that we'll show you, and then Daniel and Chris have then gone and sorted that. So on July 20th, we had a special meeting of the trustees to approve an RFP for energy and infrastructure improvement projects with Johnson Controls as the basically the stick handler of the project. They did a technical services audit. At that time, we were saying we were looking at about $4.1 million for these projects, and they went and did a technical audit with our facility staff and their engineers, and they came up with a scope of work that could improve our energy performance, our lighting, also reduce life cycle, replace life cycle equipment, as well as, of course, reduce some of our energy footprint as well. So we received, after the audit, they gave us a scope of work with costs of things that could be done. That total scope of work was about $7.7 million. We, of course, have money right now saved up from IMR, about $4.1 million. And so the rest of the project are what we call shovel ready. That could be done at a later time, possibly even this year, depending on what our CMR and IMR funding grants come in at. We haven't seen that. Hopefully we see that at the end of March, like all our other funding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. We've got some pictures as well as the chart. And then Dan's going to talk to you a little bit about the technical audit process and how we got to this scope of work with Johnson Controls. So I'm just going to share my screen.
You have to move it over.
Can you see this? Do you see the pictures?
Yes, we see the pictures.
See the pictures. Okay. So Daniel, why don't you take us through what they're seeing here?
Okay. Again, to reiterate what Christine just spoke of, this project was about life cycle and energy performance, and not exclusively to energy performance and not exclusively to life cycle. It is also somewhat a parallel stream to our capital projects request, as well as what we normally do in our maintenance or IMR programs. So they are not exclusive, but they are intertwined. So for instance, our request for the major modernization at Galbraith and trying to take a look at the system as a whole, we want Galbraith to be its own project. So we are purposely staying back off of that building, doing our maintenance that we need to do to keep it going forward, but we're hoping to get the big lump of money and get that project done on its own. So taking Galbraith out, as well as some of our other main requests in our capital project, left us with about 13 buildings that we want to take a look at. Again, this project is about infrastructure and life cycle. It's not about building new space or modulars or anything like that. It's just dealing with the older equipment that we have in the buildings. For instance, we have a few buildings that were built in the time period where metric stuff was put in. Metric ceilings, metric lights, so on and so forth. We can no longer get replacement materials for that. We cannot buy lamps for that. We just can't do it. Fortunately, in some of those buildings, there's some major mechanical systems that we need to do in those buildings. So pairing the major mechanical upgrades with some of the energy stuff gets us to a project-based direction. The report that you were, that we submitted to the earlier meeting was basically the laundry list. And it had it broken out into the major categories: LED, boilers, so on and so forth, basically for each building. But that was not project-based. For instance, at LCI, if we're going to do the heat pump replacement, which we need to do, there's 106 of them in that building. So it's basically like a little refrigerator sitting up in the ceiling spaces. The pipes are all corroded, they're starting to leak, and they're just not that efficient anymore. But in order to replace those and some of the associated piping, we got to take all the ceiling down and all the lights down to get at this stuff. So it makes no sense to put back 40-year-old pieces of equipment, or even 60 in some cases, in order to put these things in. So what Chris and I have done, and as Christine stated, is that we've gone back to Johnson Controls and said, okay, you've given us the overall costs of all these chunks. Let's slice it down and build it back into projects. So they've worked on that, and attached to this presentation is that redefined list. But let's start with some of the pictures that we have here. This is a great example with Gerald Proby and Mike Mountain Forest. Sister elementary schools built a few years apart. These two pictures show the glaring, pun intended, difference in the lighting between the two buildings. Mike Mountain Forest, on the right-hand side there, has what we call high-pressure sodium or sodium vapor lights. It is a real orange color. My kids go there. I'm not happy with those lights in there. Versus over at Gerald Proby, it's strict fluorescent. But you can see from the picture, we're actually having some of these strips going out on us. And to go in there and replace that is starting to become difficult. So two different buildings, very similar, two different lighting schemes, but it's essentially the same problem. The lighting is no longer adequate. And changing it out to an LED, we chose LED because that's the most energy efficient, the most available, and the most flexible lighting possible. It's not about saving all the dollars on energy. It's not about any of that. It's about the correct selection of the type of lighting to get us through into the next generation of a modern facility. Next slide here that Christine has shows again the two libraries. Proby has the same lighting in its library as is in the classroom, and you can see that we have color problems up there. It's going brown in some. It's also very high, and you can also see the hot spot up on the ceiling. Same with Mike Mountain Forest. In the top photo there, we've got all the lights turned off, and you can see there's a hot spot in there, and that's a modern light that we've put in there just to test it. The photograph below is actually, one of the lofts at Mountain Forest, and you can see that those are the square rectangle sodium vapor lights. Again, a burning patch of light on the ceiling, and it's supposed to throw the light down on the floor. But as you can see where the computer stations are, it's actually very dark down there. It's inappropriate light. This one is a prime example of the kind of philosophy that we use. Both Mike Mountain Horse, the picture on the left is the original constructed system, which is a troffer light along one side. Those are strip fluorescents. We can no longer get the lenses for those. When we touch them, because they're made of plastic, they fall apart. And the other thing is, if you look at the ceiling, you can see how all the ceiling tiles have discolored. In Mountain Forest and in Proby, we have heat pumps in there. In Mike Mountain Forest last summer, just at the very tail end of the heating system, we had a major leak at Mike Mountain Forest. So over the summer, in 6 weeks, we went in there, pulled the ceiling, pulled the lights, pulled all the heat pumps and all the piping in half of the main corridors, and put in all the new heating equipment we needed, new ceiling tiles, and the LED fixtures. So here's a prime example. Same building, 50 feet apart, what new LED lighting does for the environment that they're in. I'd also direct your attention to the left photo. You can see that there's fluorescent strips in the hallways, but at the door on the left, you can see that's a classroom. You can see the orange light spilling out into the hallway. So that's an example for the lighting. Some of the other projects we're looking at are pieces of equipment that are no longer available to be salvaged and rebuilt, so on and so forth. So the simple math that we did here is we broke it again down into project costs, took the lump sum quotes. Johnson Controls put out these scopes of work to 3 contractors for each trade. So 3 electricians, 3 plumbers, 3 T-bar guys, so on and so forth, and we've sorted it into projects. The ones in the blue are the ones that we, as we call it, are preferred projects. It's the most heavy-duty stuff that will get us down the road for the next 5 years. Those are the ones we'd like to tackle, and it also comes very close to the $4.1 million that we have available. The other ones on that project are the ones that we can delay, depending on CMR or IMR funding. They're shovel ready, as Christine mentioned. We have all the design drawings, all the specifications from Johnson Controls to basically, if we get the money tomorrow, we pull the trigger on this and we get going on it. So if we take LCI, which is number 3 there, it's probably it is our largest school, and it is in desperate need of some tender loving care. It's been purposely, I'm not going to say ignored, but put on the back burner just because we're sitting at a 40% occupancy in that building. But because of our growth in the west side, it's becoming a big school again. So we'd like to spend some money there and do it. So it's on the list. The main considerations there is the condensing towers, the chillers, and the heat pumps. If the chiller or the condensing unit goes, and those were put in the 1960s, there is no air conditioning in that building whatsoever. We lose the entire building. The chiller is actually built into a little tube in the building in which there's 1.5 feet of space around it. And in order to pull out the coils and refurb this, we have to get a crane in and actually pull it out of the building, drop it into the parking lot, put in brand new equipment in a 1960s unit, pick it back up and drop it back into the building. That doesn't make any sense to us. So what we're trying to do is provide clear maintenance, take care of the impending doom items, and go forward. The last item is the ones in red, which are the ones that we did not have Johnson Controls take a look at, but would be great projects to do either in the blue cycle or the green cycle. Again, depending on our IMR. Fleetwood Bottom, the boilers there were steam boilers converted to hot water now. They're doing fine, but if we're in there doing other work, we might as well do it now and take it off of our grand maintenance list. So you can see that we've taken the 7.6 or $7.7 million picture, sliced and diced it up so that we meet our dollar value that we have available for the blue. The remainder is the green, and the red is the things we'd like to do depending on our funding. That's my presentation.
Do you have any questions, specific questions about the projects or process, or I can, do you want, okay. Yes, Tyler.
So I can unmute myself. Daniel, it's like this. I obviously can't, you know a lot better than I do what needs to be done in school. So, and I get that, okay, and it makes sense now that I hear, okay, this different type of lighting system is so old, it's not good to work with anymore, we can't get parts for it, everything's great. I just had some concerns in regard to the fact that like lighting is about $3 million. So that is a fair chunk of change to spend on changing lights from orange to white. But I totally get that if there's, different systems that are hard to deal with and everything else, that they're done that way. So that's good. My only concern was that, yeah, $3 million for lights, but should we be doing ventilation at, Vic Park or wherever instead? Because when you start to add up that kind of money, $3 million is pretty good. And or, Daniel, on a separate topic, just maybe if you could let me know what, how much a gym would be over at Westminster, because I know you have an idea for a different gym expansion over there to give them something that's right size for the school. So my last comment will be, in the end, Daniel, I'm going to defer to you because obviously you and Chris and your team know a lot better what needs to be done and what should be done and is most efficient. So I'll be on board, but those were just my concerns as we went along.
Would do at, or what we have done at Buchanan or Westminster, to run the ducts through, we have to affect all the ceilings, which affects all the lights, which affects all the finishes. To put a ventilation unit in there, we actually have to reinforce the building to take the load of the equipment that's going in. So it's a big project. It is essentially a capital project. This scope of work that we have with Johnson Controls was about infrastructure, as in the backbone for the building. What are the little components that we can do to help the building along? Vic Park is my #1 IMR priority. We are working on that. We have the design already for the ventilation system, and we'll be picking away at it over the next 2.5 years, just like we did with Westminster and Buchanan, and get that one done. We were able to get the pricing here for the lighting component at Vic Park because we already have the ventilation component here. But we put that on the green side of things. We get that money, we're 3/4 of the way into getting Victoria Park further along the road right away. You ask about a gymnasium at Westminster and Buchanan. It's not only just the gymnasiums there, it's about getting an elevator, about getting central gathering space and proper admin areas. We have both of those projects, as well as Fleetwood, a bigger gym, in our eyesight for major modernizations. Basically, a gym is around the $5 million mark. Put an elevator and a central gathering, depending on the configuration, is another $1.5 million. So we're at $6.5 million at one, $4 million at another, and $3 million at that. Again, those projects are in the capital plan. Those are the ones that Alberta Ed can push Alberta Infrastructure working together to get for us. That's not at all what this program was about. Also, if we go in there and let's say we go into Galbraith and we fix the ventilation, one of the components on how we get through the gate posts on a modernization project is they start looking at those things. And if we've taken care of it through our IMR, it has a lesser value in their eyes than somebody else's total project that doesn't have that. So we slipped down a notch. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's the project we're doing. So in reality, before I got here, the number one modernization project, and tied with that was Buchanan, Westminster, and Galbraith. They were all sitting there and they've been on the list for a long time. Strategically, we said, okay, Galbraith needs a lot more work, and it's work that we can't tackle within our IMR. We approached our planning director in the south, but Westminster and Buchanan, and we took it on with our IMR money. We spread it over 3 fiscal years for IMR money and just plugged away on it and got it done. That's exactly what we're going to do now with Victoria Park.
Thank you, Danielle. Donna, I see your hand is up.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much for your presentation. You answered some of my questions. One of my questions was about the IMR money, and we really don't know how much you will get or not get. And so I wanted to know how your projects would go forward with that variable in there. So this, by making it in projects at specific schools, I really can see how you've got it broken down. It makes sense to me. The other thing is I wanted to thank you for giving us the graphics of the lighting. I'm a fan of lighting, but I didn't know, oops, that's my dog. I didn't know how that was going to work out. So I'm just thanking you for your great presentation.
Thank you. Again, I chose those 2 buildings because, you know, it's night and day, again, pun intended, between the buildings. If you can imagine somebody in an art class trying to paint a picture, or somebody who has eyesight problems, specifically colorblind problems, working in that orange light is not exactly conducive to their learning.
Thank you, Donna. Jan, your hand was up earlier. Is your hand still up?
Yes, it is. When we were doing the boundary review, and we talked about how we were going to accommodate students, and I'm thinking like with LCI, we were going to be moving students over from the west side over to LCI, and some changes needed to be made to accommodate them. And I think there's other schools as well, is that if we're going to be moving students to different schools, well, we need to make sure that we have all of these things in place that are going to not only improve the school, but help with the learning. So I'm pleased that that the way it's been broken down, and that we can just do part of it now and part of it when we get that new money. Thanks very much, Daniel, for doing that, because I think that really helps explain a lot of what we need to do.
If I can just say one more thing about LCI. LCI in the proposal from Johnson Controls is really the mechanicals of the building. Within my IMR projects, we are doing things in that building already. We have quotes for painting, ceiling tiles, lights. We're actually going to shift a few of our renters around to free up classroom space and get our renters into, let's say, less desirable teaching space, but it's easier for us to renovate those spaces into an office space rather than trying to take those spaces and convert them into classroom spaces. So there's a lot of parts in motion here, and we're coordinating all these individual projects to get us as far down the line to give the best possible environments for the students.
Well, thank you, Daniel, and I know the board appreciates the clarity that you've been able to provide by meeting with us today, and I know we all appreciated us not needing to rush through this as board members on Tuesday, but just having this extra time to gain a deeper understanding and appreciation of both the work that needs to go into this and the vision of what's behind the decision. So thank you. I see Leanne's hand is up, so it's either Doug or Lola that has something to add to this conversation.
Yeah, just to wrap up, Daniel, first of all, appreciate the information we have now in front of us. I know we were probably in a meeting on Tuesday, just caught a little off guard. Probably needed a reminder about the decisions we made in July. But I want to add on to what Tyler said. Your team and your expertise and looking at what our needs is an overall plan, and that is your role, and we support you on that role. As far as LEDs, lighting, I'm involved presently in a replacement plan on a building in the industrial section, and just the long-term benefits of the lighting and the savings is quite a bit. But I do know that an initial investment, you need dollars to do that. So again, I commend you on that. We're looking at an overall thing, what our district needs to do, and I like the idea that and I hope people are listening in on this. You're prioritizing so that we have a better opportunity for upgrades in buildings that really need the work. So I want to leave it at that, and thank you very much for all you've done and the explanation.
Thanks, Doug.
Are there any other comments or questions for Daniel or Christine? Okay, seeing none, we need a motion. Maybe perhaps, I don't have my paper in front of me, I had to give it Christine, tell us what we need in our motion to move forward.
Yeah, so the motion we were asking for was kind of allowing us flexibility on this particular project. And so the motion we had presented to you was the board approves that administration may enter into a contract with Johnson Controls LLP for the performance infrastructure program as presented under the condition that these projects are funded through available IMR and CMR funding available. Sorry, there's an extra available. But really it's approving, if you're approving this project, we know we would initially sign for the 4 million that has been prioritized, but should we get available funding for CMR and IMR that would take us into that next phase, then we don't have to necessarily come back. We can just get on that as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Jen, I see your hand up.
Yes, did you want that motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I move that the board approves the administration may enter into a contract with Johnson Controls LLP for the performance infrastructure program as presented under the condition that these projects are funded through available IMR and CMR funding available.
Thank you, Jen. Is there any further discussion? Being none, call the question. All in favor? So carried unanimously.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're pretty excited to get on this. And yeah, I do want to extend my thank you to Daniel, who obviously he can provide such a better explanation because he does understand the technical aspects about this. My heart goes out to just getting our schools improved, and I appreciate your extra time today for truly trying to understand this. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you again, Daniel. Like we've said, we appreciate the clarity you've provided, and I know that these changes are going to just improve the environment that our students and our staff have through learning and working. So thank you for your work on this, and thank you for being willing to sit with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, this brings the special meeting of the board to an end. So we will now adjourn our meeting for today. Thank you.
We need to have another meeting right after.